Video heavily inspired by Dupli's The 7 Levels of Rappers, which you should absolutely check out. Before going on with these 5 levels, it's important I establish the morality system I'm using for this analysis. If you don't want to listen to this yap, skip to the time-stamped part of the video. But I don't want to hear a single twat then wonder why I placed some characters in some ways. Evil is defined as the quality of being morally wrong in principle and practice. And for this video, I will be prioritizing the principle part over the practice part. Meaning that a kill count on its own will rarely mean much to me, and it will be the intent that I will favor when determining which fictional character is more morally bankrupt. If you're a consequentialist, for instance, then you'll pretty much entirely disagree with this list. However, just as an example, intentional vehicular manslaughter/murder is something I would, for instance, deem a lot worse than a drunk driving fatality, though both are obviously terrible. I'll also take into account stuff like if one character has a reasonable benefit or some redeeming qualities to them. For instance, to reflect my point, a drug dealer who is simply trying to earn some money to support his family, I wouldn't deem as morally bankrupt as a drug dealer who does it for the fun of getting people addicted on crack. Bottom line, the actual scope of these characters' crimes will rarely be relevant to their placement on this list. With every new level I present, there will be 4 categories of villainy corresponding to that individual level of evilness, those being the fanatic, villains who are driven by an ideology, philosophy, or perhaps religion; the grudge, villains who are driven by their personal vendetta against someone; the beast, villains who are driven solely by their instincts or their impulses; and the mastermind, much more vague category, but basically just describes a character who has a solid network with which they pull the strings behind plots in order to accomplish their goal. You'll find it isn't uncommon for there to be some overlap between these categories, but I think it works well enough just to help me organize them a little bit. With no further ado, let's start with... This is a category aimed at fictional characters who, while are unquestionably destructive, I wouldn't necessarily even refer to them as evil for various reasons. For starters, we have Tyler Durden. Yeah, sure, starting a cult based on this self-loathing, pathetic philosophy is certainly a net negative for society, but the 2 big factors for me is that the philosophy stems from a good, albeit incredibly misguided place, and Tyler is also very clearly mentally unstable to the point where he's not even aware of what he's doing and whatnot. There are moments where Tyler definitely does go overboard, albeit still out of that misguided moral framework, like when he threatens a guy working at a gas station that will kill him if he doesn't pursue his dreams, or when, implants bombs everywhere. But the thing that is preventing me from really using these instances is the fact that Edward Norton's character clearly opposes these ideas and tries very adamantly to stop them once he understands them, making it kind of questionable whether you'd even include the more unhinged scenes of Tyler as any evidence of his morality, hence my drunk driving example earlier. Next on the level we have Captain Ahab. If Tyler's my allegory for drunk driving, then Ahab would be my allegory for crime of passion. Yes, his hatred and desire for revenge for this animal, which robbed him of his leg, is extremely obsessive and destructive as it becomes the cause of other people's misery as well as his inevitable engulfment. Though yes, there are allegories painting Ahab as some sort of fallen angel, Lucifer figure, driven by his own war against God due to the lack of autonomy leading into this existential angst, I still wouldn't apply evil as a descriptor when talking about him, especially because it has very understandable reason to be pissed, like losing your leg would probably suck. The third one will raise eyebrows though. It's Nyarlathotep. Yeah, I get it. Nyarlathotep is the godlike eldritch entity who doesn't see any significance in humanity, therefore is ambivalent to their suffering. So how is it not evil? Well, because Lovecraft said so. Constructs like good or evil are inherently social ideas that Nyarlathotep exists outside of. And Lovecraft never subscribed to the idea that Nyarlathotep is this uber evil, malevolent space Satan. So by default, we can't really refer to him as an evil character, because he isn't. He explicitly isn't. To continue the allegory train, if the first was drunk driving, the second was a crime of passion, then this one I'd compare to something like a black hole. Is black hole inherently evil because it's destructive? I wouldn't necessarily say so. This is also where I'd personally put Q from All Tomorrow, simply because their intent is so opaque. I think most people immediately are willing to prescribe them as the worst due to how visceral their mutilations are. But would you say that a person who moves into an apartment and exterminates a bunch of cockroaches is evil? I inherently don't think it's really appropriate to involve our moral framework when working with entities that are clearly alien. And when I say alien, I don't mean Star Wars or Marvel alien, where aliens might as well just be humans but with different design. I mean operating in an entirely entirely different system we can't really understand. To finish level 1, Baku Madarame. As proclaimed, the lie eater, ultimate gambler who participates in incredible high-stakes gambles in order to overthrow this insane organization of psychopaths and ultimately achieve world peace, pretty self-explanatory if you ask me how he lands here. Baku's not evil, just very vicious. If you're an innocent or maybe still a very questionable person but good at heart, Baku will help you. Though if you're a scumbag, he feels absolutely no pity for absolutely dismantling you till you piss your pants from fear. Still, due to the nature of Kakura organization, Baku still blatantly participates in highly illegal acts which involve these insane psychopaths who have zero issues sacrificing innocents, and the scope of the acts only ramp up as it goes along. He's certainly very flawed, but in comparison to the characters that follow, he might as well be a saint. And if seeing Naruto on this tier gave you vertigo, then you're not ready for the next level. Clutch your pearls, because characters are suddenly going to skyrocket in villainy, starting with Johann Liebert. I can very easily imagine that this will be a very controversial take, supposedly because in some people's eyes, Johann is comfortably one of the most evil characters of all time, which I completely disagree with for a myriad of reasons. First one being, level 2 does not mean the character isn't evil, in fact it means the opposite obviously. It's just that the levels that are about to follow are simply that much worse in comparison. Secondly, when speaking of Johann and trying to judge the reasons why he does what he does, all the manipulations of various children to the point of extinguishing any light in them, all the attempts to completely deconstruct and degrade morality, they're all founded on his belief that essentially a mixture of nihilism and existentialism. He saw the abyss and blinked, basically. He doesn't really enjoy destroying people. He's not a sadist. He just doesn't really care nor finds any significance in their ideals. However, Johann isn't a psychopath under any metric. We've seen he has clear empathy towards Karl's story, even shedding tears over it. As a boy, he shed tears upon accidentally traumatizing Anna. When he killed the foster parents, he was sure would have led Kinderheim back to them. He clearly cared about Tenma and genuinely tried to prove him wrong. He also clearly has a soft spot for many people who were tormented in Kinderheim like himself. Like when he saved Grimmer or made Richards kill himself because he killed Stefan, another Kinderheim person, albeit for a justifiable reason. And while yes, he did have an intent of literally committing omnicide, I do think it is very important to mention how he completely changed his mind on that once he regained his memories. So similar to Tyler, I don't feel entirely comfortable applying that to his overall morality, as he's very much mentally scarred from the horrific torments he experienced. Not to mention, with the way Monster ends, the heavy implication left in the air is that Johann did potentially redeem himself due to leaving evidence of him leaving the hospital, which plays into the concept of monsters not leaving any trails. Once again, this will probably be my most controversial take here, but it's important to note how there's pretty significant difference in level 1 and level 2 for me. Next on the line we have Dr. Doom, the good old face of benevolent dictators with the biggest hate boner you'll ever see for one Reed Richards. This is an awkward one because comic characters are inherently incredibly inconsistent, and you can very easily make an argument for Doom falling a level below or a level above. For starters, he genuinely cares a lot for his people, does genuinely have people he loves like Valeria, does genuinely want to save his mother from Mephisto, does overall genuinely want a greater future for people. However, you can also very easily find comics where he sacrifices Reed's sons to demons out of grudge, or the woman he loved by turning her into an armor he wears, or how straight up rewiring or nuking realities because of his personal grudge. His self-destructiveness and pride completely damages his otherwise noble intentions to a pretty significant point, though he still has enough redeeming qualities to not make him descend much further. Next on the line is the golden god himself, Dennis Reynolds. I know, pretty a big jump. Funnily enough, looking at this level right now, and I don't feel bad about insinuating this guy is quite comfortably the worst one here. His ego easily matching Doom's, though he doesn't quite have the resume to back his up. Plus, he's an incredibly sleazy and manipulative abuser, and an implied serial rapist, potentially child predator. Now, he personally continuously confirms how every lay he lands is with a woman of age, though he is seen, as he calls it, investing into girls he wants to sleep with while they're 16/17 and so on. Anyhow, it's clear that Dennis would have zero issues going lower on that number if the law allowed it. At this point where I think it's important to separate the competence from morality, because obviously Dennis isn't really capable of actually doing anything meaningfully terrible in the same way Johann or Doom are, but like, would he? Absolutely. Some other things that we've seen Dennis not do himself but allow from other gang members is cannibalism, whether it be enforced or not, child rape, and child murder. The only kind of redeeming qualities Dennis has is the fact that he does legitimately have a pretty twisted understanding of sex due to being molested as a teen, as well as having, well, Frank for a father. Plus, he is seen having some type of deeper connection or care for other people, even if questionable due to his mental state. Though it is important to note that as far as on-screen instances go, Dennis doesn't actually do anything anything horribly illegal, or at least anything that would earn him any lower spot. And to finish level 2 off, we have Walter White. I can already feel people getting irritated by me putting Walt on the same level with Johann, but like on a serious note, what about Johann is concretely more bankrupt morally than Walter? Seriously, tell me. They both target children, and while aren't gleeful about their potential that are willing to go there, they both actively work with Nazis and have zero turmoil about it. They both actively torment and hurt people they themselves care about, and they both sorta redeem themselves at the end. These two are on the same level to me morally. They just have different motivations. Walt, while he isn't sadistic, is definitely prideful of his criminal activities and has no issues continuing them even once he earns enough money. Though his desire for some control is certainly understandable after having a life of complacency and missed opportunities one after another, alongside a natural instinct to be remembered by his son the same way he remembers his father. Plus, his genuine desire to help his family financially never actually faded away, as it can be seen by the finale. With all that said, it leads us into... Characters here are 100% unfixable and absolutely abhorrent. You see what I mean when I say that just because something is on a lower level, it doesn't actually mean I'm saying that the character isn't actually evil. We'll start with Light Yagami. This, I reckon, will probably be a pretty hot take also. Just in general, putting Light above the likes of Johann and such. But here's the thing, fellas. He sucks. And there's nothing you can really extrapolate from him which makes him sound decent at all. His own ideology he follows is blatantly fucking hypocritical and stupid, as it has nothing to do with any ideal or anything. It's just a god complex. He doesn't care whether you're actually guilty or not, as he doesn't really check, and he clearly just wants to do the same kaput maneuver to any person who even mildly disagrees with him vocally. And then there's some fucking imbecile in the comments will be like, well, to be fair, he reduced the crime rate substantially. Yes, most dictators do that. Most dictators reduce the crime rate because the crimes against humanity that they themselves endorse aren't punishable in the area they have any jurisdiction over. And before anyone brings up the memory loss arc as a clear-cut evidence that Light can be redeemed, I call bollocks on that. Watch Death Note. Watch the first episode of Death Note and see Light's doomer mentality monologue about how rotten the world is, how hellish the cycle is. The shit he spouts borders on being as pathetic as Tyler's ideology because he's bored. He even says this to Ryuk. The reason he acts as a two-dimensional goody two-shoes during memory loss is because he wasn't bored. He had something to do. The second they caught Higuchi, he would have reverted back into his same mentality. And while yes, it's clear that he did at least somewhat care about his family, he was still willing to get past those personal feelings if it meant reinforcing his ideals, which he failed at. This guy is a fucking dumbass, by the way. I want to mention this as well. Like, this guy is a fucking idiot. And I don't even mean in a stereotypical sense that people say, oh, his emotional management is so shit, like his pride is so exploitable. No, I mean generally. His plans and strategies are pretty fucking dog water and are so insistent on being complex that he blatantly just ignores a far more optimal strategy. Like when he was being followed by the FBI, all he had to do was just wait. They could have gone any dirt on him, he would have been fine, but instead he pulls this stupid, ridiculous plan with Ray that entirely hinges on Ray being the dumbest special agent you've ever seen in your entire life. So Light's plan with the bus jacker was, I will make Ryuk, I will make Ray think I'll put myself and others in danger, and the only way I'll actually believe him to calm the situation down is by making an ultimatum that I have to see his ID. Bollocks. Why would you hinge your plan on a special agent giving a fuck? Keep in mind, this is the first time Light even sees this guy's face. He had no reason to profile him in any sort of way. He just assumes he'll follow along. Like, this reminds me of the scene from Breaking Bad when Badger thinks if he asks a cop if he's a cop, that he's obligated to tell you. But the worst part of this plan isn't even this, it's the aftermath. Light's plan is specifically to wait a bit after this confrontation to control Ray, and then kill other agents with him. But for some reason, Ray never passes this information to his supervisors. Special agents have to keep a meticulous 24/7 track of everything they do while leading people like this. If a special agent showed his ID in a life or death circumstance that involved not just him, but other civilians and the suspect, while the criminal in question ended up dying, it doesn't even matter if the method didn't align with Kira's. You better bet that there would have been like 20 different special agents all up in Light's shit if he tried to pull this stunt off. Like, this is a ridiculous plan, but Ray's dumbass never passes this information for any reason. Or the memory loss plan, which, look, I'm aware what Light's aim was. By making L think he was Kira for a while and then leading him to another potential Kira, he strays him away from the potential threat of Higuchi being killed. Because Light wasn't killed, so in that sense, it's a smart misdirection. But let's actually look at what had to happen in order for this plan to work. 1. Higuchi had to own a gun so that he could potentially revolt against policemen. 2. He had to be ballsy enough to actually attempt running, despite the fact that they most likely were armed as well as outnumbered him. Which, keep in mind, Light never met this guy. He had no way to judge his character. 3. This whole thing had to escalate into a ridiculous car chase. 4. And this is the most insane part. Light and L, for some reason, went on the crime scene themselves together in a helicopter while no one else was there. Why? You're telling me you have enough resources to buy an entire building, but you don't have resources to get some specialist on the scene? Why is L there? Why is Light there? He's just a college student. Why the fuck is he co-piloting a helicopter? Well, let me tell you why. Because if he wasn't and was in the headquarters like he was supposed to stay in, the second the team saw the rules on the Death Note, which said that anyone who touches it is prone to die upon its destruction, there's no way they would have allowed Light to touch it. And it doesn't matter anyway, given how he wouldn't be able to actually keep his mind to it, as he couldn't kill anyone in that circumstance. Or at the end with Nier, why even hinge your plan on this circle jerk session of fake notes and shit? Why not just get a couple of assassins who will shoot up everyone by you? Like, you have enough control and resources to do this. But yeah, this dude sucks. Speaking of man-children, Homelander. Now, Homelander is a character who is very clearly incredibly gleefully sadistic. He enjoys tormenting and brutally mutilating those weaker in himself. He's also a rapist. He's also xenophobic. But what prevents me from stooping lower is the fact that his motive, while unjustifiable, is totally understandable. Homelander's entire childhood was completely robbed of him, so it isn't necessarily shocking that he views humans the way he does, and yet is so thirsty for approval and admiration, even if it's a farce based on fear. He's very blatantly a very damaged individual who seeks that family connection about Ryan, as well as did really try to make sure he can reunite with Soldier Boy. However, the negatives far outweigh the positives, and there's really not an inkling of other things you can try and use to make him seem reasonable. He's a complete degenerate monster. Up next, we have Claude Frollo. Yeah, everything which I mentioned for Dennis can just be reused and cranked up to 11. This guy is disgusting as fuck. Given his history with his brother and how he watched in real time how he degraded upon falling with a gypsy woman, Frollo's bigotry is certainly understandable from his perspective. However, what absolutely isn't is how he completely loses his mind over Esmeralda, who is a minor in the book, by the way, until he's giving her an ultimatum to either be with him or to be burned at the pyre. I guess the only thing I can really point out to in an attempt to not put him higher is simply the fact that he wouldn't have killed her if she accepted, so he isn't outwardly adamant about killing itself. Fellas, I'm grasping at straws over here. He sucks. Yeah, awful. Really, really bad. He did, though, seemingly somewhat care about Quasimodo, I guess reluctantly, from the side. But yeah, my begrudging praise for the original insults kind of stops there. And for the final level 3 candidate, we have Hans Landa. Once again, similarly to Frollo, it's less of a case where they have something redeeming about them, and more so that they aren't as utterly vile in every single metric possible. Obviously, Hans enjoys tormenting people. He enjoys toying with them to take control of other people's lives. I mean, he's a Nazi, you know. Already this level was kind of something that came with the territory, although the fact that he's willing to betray them is something I'm not quite sure whether it should be a positive or a negative. I guess the only somewhat positive thing I can say about him is that once he made a deal with Aldo, he was willing to cooperate with him for his own benefit and was willing to forget about their beef. I mean, I'll take what I can get at this point. All of these suck, just not as hard as... Alright, time to get serious. This is where the true, absolutely unhinged characters introduce themselves, all of which collectively are completely unreasonable and basically walking explosions that are targeting anything that breathes. To start off, let's talk about Anton Sugar. Now, to be honest, this is the character whose placement on the list changed the most. Originally, I had him as low as level 2, and my reasoning for that was simply, oh well, Anton doesn't enjoy killing people, and is even shown to be kinda sympathetic by offering them a deal. But then I thought about that for more than literally 2 seconds, and I realized how fucking backhanded that redeeming quality is, because he's the one who imposes who gets to live or die. Yeah, sure, he may not personally get some sort of sadistic fulfillment in the sense that he's gleeful about it, but he feels fulfilled in a sense that he's doing his self-imposed role. This guy is fucking insane, probably the biggest psychopath on the entire list. Utterly ruthless, utterly lacking in any semblance of empathy or reason, to be honest. He's the harbinger of death, of that spontaneous chance. That's how Anton sees himself, hence the infamous coin. Despite how utterly ruthless he is, he does seem to have a very strange priority of honor within his actions. Like, firstly, he never lies and is consistently blunt about his intentions. And secondly, the same way he may just randomly pick you as the next victim, he also may just randomly let you go. Anton, in a way, completely disassociates himself from the killing he does, not really seeing himself nor the coin itself in a material sense as the product of your misfortune, but just as a fate's tools, a notion he is challenged on. At this point, it's not even a case of Anton having anything redeeming going on in his favor that prevents him from descending lower, but it's rather that he's just getting saved with the fact that he cares about people so little. He seemingly doesn't even get anything out of violence, which he goes, out of his way to do. I don't know. He's unhinged. Now let's talk about the pick that will definitely get some eyebrows raised due to the placement. This, alongside my Q and Johan takes, is probably the hottest one simply because he isn't at level 5, and I perfectly understand why people feel he belongs there. As far as wrathful sadists go, you won't really find a bigger fish than Am. Am is basically Q, but if they had actual malicious intent behind their actions. Like, Am clearly enjoys tormenting people. The problem I have with him is that he's simply far too understandable. Like, Am's backstory is basically Homelander on steroids. This guy probably suffered the most out of everyone in the story, to be fair, so it's understandable why he would lash out to the same fate humans have given him to other humans. Though after that initial rageful extermination, once he settles with a couple of survivors, he does kind of go off the rails, cementing him pretty comfortably at level 4. Going up next, we have Michael Myers. Similarly to Am, I feel like I have to spend less time justifying why he's here, and more time why he's not at level 5. Dude is pretty much the archetype of a complete blank, emotionless serial killer who just desires to slash others with no motive whatsoever. He's literally if you put the trait of evilness onto a black canvas and added nothing else to it, which is kind of why he can't really get promoted to a higher level. Like, I get it, yeah, Michael, he's a sadistic slasher who's very much 100% aware of what he's doing. He's intelligent, he enjoys murdering people in very painful ways, but that is just kind of it. Like, he doesn't have anything else going for him. Once again, I can't reiterate this enough. Just because you aren't level 5 evil, that doesn't necessarily mean you have anything redeeming about it. It just means you aren't as utterly fucked up. And to finish off the circle of hell, we have Junko and Oshima. When I said there's some overlap with these categories, this is the one I was aiming for at the most, because Junko obviously operates from a sense of philosophy as well, even though that philosophy is rooted in instincts. However, this criteria fits her also, as she's the ultimate puppeteer of tragedy. She's essentially a crazy anarchist who enjoys despair because hope is just too predictable to her due to her expert analysis skills. It's established that she grew up in poverty, so she probably inevitably reached some level of success due to her skills and never had to struggle again. That's probably something that at least partially had initiated her that fixation. Even on its own, her excuse being, I'm bored, is already pretty shit. It's barely tangible given how she's literally planning this whole thing to happen, therefore she's predicting it in advance. And other characters who can analyze perfectly too aren't totally on board with her belief, so it's basically just cope. Yeah, she's just bonkers, enjoys orchestrating murders, brainwashing, Boon's eyeballs. So that was level 4. All of these villains are some of the most despicable, awful characters in all of fiction, but you can't help but feel like they're just missing that one extra piece to truly be cemented as the worst of the worst, you know? Like, Anton lacks any meaningful sadistic desire. Am has a really understandable motive. Michael doesn't really do much besides murder. Junko's cringe. But to get that out of the way, it leads us to these next 4 right here are collectively just the most out there characters you'll find. No redeeming qualities, no reason, nothing even remotely positive about them. They basically possess everything terrible you can possibly think of. Their resumes are spotless when it comes to moral bankruptcy on their daily villain quota. And what better place to start at than with LeBron James of dicks, Judge Holden. Yeah, normie pick. I get it. I get it, fellas. He's just effortlessly one of the worst. Everything which I just said about Anton, like how that one missing piece to truly make him the worst is active sadistic intent. And there you go, you have it with the judge. This pale, bald fuck rides with literal scalp hunters of Native Americans, and he somehow makes them seem well-adjusted in comparison. Like, there are scenes of Toadwine getting upset that he torments an Apache child before murdering him after raiding his tribe. Like, you're a scalp hunter. You're not gonna take moral high ground all of a sudden, but you are somehow justified in that. He gleefully kills and captures animals simply because he doesn't want want them to be free. He gleefully diddles children and basically worships the very act of violence. In Judge's eyes, man worships all kinds of gods, whether it be money, fame, profit, whatever. Out of these, war is the ultimate divinity, an existentially higher one, because by enacting violence on another man, you're basically becoming their god. It's the ultimate form of divinity, and he intends to be the very best at it. Nothing will be given mercy, no breath will leave without getting engulfed in that dance of life, because a man who doesn't dance isn't a man at all, and simply doesn't deserve to live. By you not participating in this dance, you're essentially allowing characters like Holden to keep on living, as he says, forever. The implication is made 1,000 times more terrifying if you buy all the Gnostic imagery and the symbolism, like the phallic throbbing sun, or the 8 skulls representing the Ogdad, one of which Holden knocks over, which represents Demiurge's realm. Yeah, he's just the worst. Like, despite being so consistently talked about as an evil dude online, I almost feel like he's still kind of underrated in terms of how actually evil he is. Speaking of these implied supernatural deities which possess a form of malevolent control over the setting, Paul and Peter. These punk-ass twats are so uncomfortable to watch. Similarly to Holden, there's absolutely zero actual reason, zero actual equality there. They're just the most provocative, sadistic duo you'll ever see, which enjoys slowly peeling away control from innocent families, betting on their lives, knowing with certainty that they will never win. And they will just fuck around with you because they can. Kill a dog and then make you play a game where you have to find its dead body. Play a game where you start suffocating the toddler while you force the mom to undress in front of everyone. Kill them one by one and purposefully try to give them a small sense of hope for a split second before inevitably engulfing it again. There's just nothing positive to say. But hold on a minute. If they have no reason, then how are they the villain which hold a grudge? In fact, the beginning and the ending of the movie clearly show us that they do this basically to every family they can find. What is the grudge here? Well, the grudge is against you. Paul and Peter hate your ass for watching this movie, and they will actively do everything in their power to piss you off as a watcher, purposefully teasing you about how hopeless the situation is for other people you're rooting for. It really doesn't get any pettier than that. These two twats are in complete control of the entire movie and are basically teabagging your ass throughout its entirety, exploiting the Chekhov's gun trope by purposefully showing you a knife that you think will be reincorporated later so that a character can save herself. No, purposefully making characters as incompetent as possible, almost to the point where it's laughable. Well, yeah, you gotta have that. With that, let's get to our next candidate, the ultimate Sigma male, Patrick Bateman. What? How can a Sigma be at level 5? Novel Bateman differs quite a lot from the movie version. First of all, and I feel like this is the most important part, the murders are not ambiguous. They happen in the book, as shown by the taxi scene, which I feel like is the most often used point of contention to try and downplay how evil Bateman is. Although, to be honest, even in the movie, I don't really feel like it's really left to an interpretation that much. Like, if his murders really didn't happen, then the woman who was trying to sell her apartment wouldn't have acted so weirdly about him. It's just another example of the movie showing us how everyone is unhinged in this universe as Bateman is. And look, I know that a majority of people don't really feel like Bateman is all that, but here's the thing. As far as characters who are actually respected in literature and media go, and as far as you aren't extending this list to any random obscure edgelord, Patrick is quite comfortably the most evil character of all time. And it isn't even necessarily debatable. He's just so fucked up on literally every single conceivable level. Find me another character here who smushes cheese all over a woman's vagina and then forcefully stuffs a rabid rat inside it so that it devours her from the inside just because he wants to torture her. Or another character who hooks a car battery up to a person's nipples out of their own amusement. Or another character who feeds a seal nickels in the zoo simply because other people's joy bothered him. Or beats a young woman on the street because she's, quote, too ugly to rape. End of quote. Or makes sausages he devours out of various women he kidnapped and tortured, or aborts the babies he inseminated himself. Who does that? Seriously, he does have some extreme shit that I don't even feel like going into super in-depth about. And it's made infinitely worse by the fact that it is constantly reinforced that he does this out of his own sexual pleasure and frustration. I mean, there's also one scene where it's implied he also wants to diddle a corpse of a child he just murdered, but the only reason he doesn't is because there are far too many people around him. He's just so deplorable on every single level, and there's nothing likable about him. Like, if Bateman wasn't a serial killer rapist, it's not like he would have been a likable guy. He would still be a fucking racist, rich, corporate asshole. Like, the closest you get to him showing anything redeeming is the fact that he doesn't kill his secretary, but the reason he doesn't kill her isn't even because he cares about her, it's simply because she's the only person who feels real to him, so it's still inherently a selfish reason. Like, at that point, you might as well make excuses for Holden because he liked to teach others his philosophy. Like, we're not gonna grasp at those straws that much right now, let's be fucking real. Yeah, anyway, he sucks. There's still one more villain, though, who out of